It's Friday. It's my Friday. I slept for 5 hours after I got off work, but there's a lot of work to do in the food forest. I'm having a lot of problems this year with deer, and they are absolutely destroying the garden. Alright, so I ran into a bit of a weird construction zone there. Had to focus on what was going on. Anyhow, look, I got this food forest. I talk about it all of the time. And in recent videos, I've kind of bragged about having the capacity to grow about 85% of my food. And that's where we've gotten up to in 5 years. But this year has been an absolute disaster. There is a family of deer that have found our food forest and they are destroying it. I've had deer pass through before, but in general it hasn't been that bad. This year is a whole other story. Alright, let's look at some of the damage from the deer. So they've been hitting these tomato plants non-stop. This is the first year I've ever had deer eating tomato plants. I thought they didn't like them, but they changed their mind. You can see here they're eating the pepper plants even after I put netting on. You can see the damage to the trees. Luckily this tree is big enough. And we had problems with this in previous years, but we just put cages around them to get them up to the height they need to be, and they were fine. But the damage to some of the annuals this year has been worse. This is all the damage to this cherry, totally stripped, but again, it's gotten taller, so it's kind of able to handle it, but it dropped a lot of fruit because of the stress. Persimmons got hit really hard, and in previous years, the deer didn't touch the persimmons at all. So this persimmon was loaded with fruit at the start of the season. They're eating the tomatoes, they're eating the beans, they're eating anything they can get their mouths on. And the thing that's interesting is there's a farm just 2 miles from our house, and that farm doesn't have any fencing, it doesn't have anything to protect it from the deer, and the deer don't hit it up. But that's a wide open expanse, right? And there's no protection. So the deer, there's woods behind the house, they live there, they're reproducing, there's nothing I can do. I'm in an urban environment, and this is a huge setback for me. I'm gonna have to go back to the drawing board this winter. I'm gonna have to reinvent the wheel in the food forest. It's going to cost me quite a bit of money and time. It's probably gonna set us back at least a year and a half for what we want to do. My baby persimmon trees are getting hit hard, all this kind of stuff, and it takes time and money to build special, housing to get the trees to get big enough that they can get over where they don't get impacted by the deer. I'm gonna have to build fencing for the raised annual beds. It's gonna be just like an ordeal, right? So that's where we're at this summer. It's been really frustrating, and my harvests haven't been as good this year because of this. But one of the things I want to talk about is what can you do? So even though that I'm not getting the harvest that I anticipated, I still want to fill up my freezer, and I want to eat in a sustainable way. Going to the store every week and getting all of this single-use packaging that's plastic and shipped in from all over God knows where is not a sustainable way to eat. And it's also not healthy. The foods are, in general, I'm generalizing, they're picked before they're ripe, they're subpar quality, and how we're approaching the food system in this global planet is going to bite us in the ass big time. Alright, so here's my point. There are things that you can do if you don't have a food forest, or if you're not getting the harvests that you want, if you're learning how to garden, or if you're having a bad year, or if you're having deer problems like I am. you can still go to a local farm and buy a ton of stuff at a great price and do food preservation and do canning and do freezing and do like we used to do traditionally and stock up your stores for winter in reusable containers. And you're buying from local farmers and you're supporting local economy, and that's what I'm talking about. So we're heading to the farm store right now. Let's do this. Alright, so I'm here at this local farm. I spent $100. That's it. $100 isn't that much money anymore. I got 2 boxes of food, a few pounds of beans, some cabbage to make some homemade sauerkraut, a few peaches to snack on. I got this bag of blood meal. Blood meal is something that can help deter deer when it's fresh. If it's not raining a lot, this will work well in the summer. The deer don't like the smell of basically this is renderings from slaughterhouses. It's one of the reasons why it's really hard to be a vegan farmer without using animal manure or using any other like bone meal or blood meal. These are the natural cycle of ecosystems, and we've come out of ecosystem dynamics, but people still buy that stuff. Now we make products in packaging, in plastic. It's just a really vicious cycle, but this blood meal will help deter some of the deer, and I'll show you. I'll show you when I get into the kitchen, but this huge, nice, well-grown, local, 2 miles from my house, $2.50 a head. You can't get that in the store, certainly not. So I've got enough work here for the weekend, and then that's what I like to do. I'll go on a Friday, get enough work for the weekend, put in 8 to 10 quarts into the freezer, and then keep repeating that process a little bit each week until you build up the freezer. And then during this winter, I'm going to be totally set up. So the other thing that I bought was 2 yards of compost mulch. I'm going to go get that now. This persimmon's doing totally fine. No idea why the deer don't touch this one, but loaded with fruit. We'll get a nice harvest here this year. Gonna have a nice harvest from this Asian pear though. The deer couldn't get up here, a little too tall for them. About another week on these guys. It'll be awesome. Loads of eggplant. Give those guys about another week. Ready to go. More squash under there. Endless kale, of course. Some more eggplants. Some Asian eggplants. The deer were really hitting these up hard. See them under there. Pretty nice. Still getting endless amounts of squash. Getting a few of these every day. One of the reasons why I grow squash, because you can put so much in the freezer. Nice. More pan squash. I like to harvest these before the seeds start. Nicer fruit. Well, you can see we're still getting quite a few beans here, even though it's the end of the season. can see the plant starting to die back, but look at all these beans. Beans are so good for consistent harvests. Getting a bunch in the freezer. It's noisy. People are doing projects. It's Saturday. Get this huge cabbage. It's gigantic. Probably 5 pounds at least. This is a bit of variation on theme. This is stewed squash with some mushroom and red wine and garden herb. Big pot again. I'll get a few quarts out of this into the freezer. And every week I do this. I do a harvest and I prepare the vegetables and I just keep stocking up the freezer.
What's up, Spock? Yeah.
Alright, what's in the kitchen? Here we've got a pot of homemade chicken broth. These are garden vegetables starting to stew. There's where we got the stock from. More garden vegetables here, more garden vegetables here. I got some more in the fridge. Got some dried herbs I'm going to be crumbling and putting away for the winter. We've got homemade sauerkraut in the fermenter. Yeah. Got some steaks ready for dinner. A couple of quarts of blueberries here I picked today. I'm just going to let them sit on the counter for, you know, maybe 48 hours and get really sweet before I freeze them. That's the state of things. Glorious water. Alright, here is my first deep freezer. Got this on sale from Costco for 150 bucks. So if you look, you can find bargains. This would fit in a closet in an apartment. So let's say you don't have land and you want to still make an impact. Boom, put one of these in your closet. Buy local produce. Freeze it up for your winter. Then you're not shipping things in. You're not using single-use plastic. Bam. So we're getting, these are greens from the garden, fruit from the garden. I've got, currently already I've got, you know, 8, 16, like 32 quarts, plus that big thing of berries. So we're getting there. This will be full by the end of the season, no doubt.